Good day, and welcome to the NBA Finals on ABC Media Call. At this time, I would now like to turn the conference over to your host, Mr. Josh Krulowitz. Please.
Thanks very much, Mary, and thanks everybody for joining us on the NBA Finals call today. By now, you should have all received a copy of our press release outlining our coverage plans for the finals. If for some reason you haven't received a copy, feel free to access the release at espnmediazone.com. ABC will carry every game of the finals beginning Thursday at 9 o'clock Eastern from Miami. And you can also hear the national radio broadcasts on ESPN Radio. And for the first time, ESPN Deportes will actually present Spanish-language televised coverage of the finals. So you can look for that as well. In terms of commentators on the ABC telecast for the seventh consecutive year, Mike Breen will call the play-by-play, and he'll be joined by analyst Jeff Van Gundy, who is on the call with us today. Mike and Jeff will work alongside reporter Doris Burke, and also former NBA ref and ESPN analyst Steve Javie will be courtside during the series as well. We'll begin the call now. We'll ask Jeff to say some remarks about what to look for in the finals briefly, and then we'll take your questions one by one, beginning with Barry Jackson at the Miami Herald. Jeff?
Thanks, Josh. I'm looking forward to the finals. I think Miami, in a hard-fought series, I'll be very interested to see San Antonio's layoff, if that hurts them early in Game 1, and if Miami's hard-fought series has kept them in a better rhythm, or they're a little bit tired going into Game 1. I think that, to me, is always intriguing when you have separate the two teams with so much dissimilar rest. I'm really looking forward to watching that and how it plays out in Game 1. But I think you couldn't have two teams that are more emblematic of what the NBA should be all about. Great team play, great individual players, and obviously great coaches as well.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Again, we'll start with questions. Barry Jackson will lead off from the Miami Herald with Rachel Cohen at AP on deck. Barry.
Hi, Jeff. A couple of things. One, what would you look at as Miami's greatest matchup concern in this series? And also, could you see Duncan and Splitter giving them the type of problems that West and Hibbert did?
Well, I think, Tony Parker's pick-and-roll game is obviously as good as any point guard's pick-and-roll game in the NBA. So it's not an individual matchup, but the way that San Antonio plays, where Parker has such great offensive energy, he'll hit you not with just one pick-and-roll, but it'll be a pick-and-roll. He'll make a pass. If they don't have anything, they'll go into a dribble handoff. They don't get anything off that, right into another pick-and-roll for Parker. So you have to defend multiple actions almost every trip down the court. And Parker, to me, has such great offensive stamina and offensive energy that from a team standpoint, I think that'll be the toughest, cover that they have. I think San Antonio has great roster flexibility. I think it's really a well-put-together roster. They can play, really big, and then they can downsize and play a shooting four as well to really stretch the floor without getting too small when they put Bonner in. I think Boris Diaw is somewhat in between a big guy and a shooter. He's not a great shooter, but what he is a great passer. So I think their front-line flexibility is absolutely terrific and a great advantage against most teams.
Let's go to Rachel Cohen at AP with Richard Deitch at Sports Illustrated on deck. Rachel.
As you travel around games, how have you seen fans' view of the Heat evolve over these last three seasons? Do you feel it's changed some over these years?
I do. I think in general, the Heat in that first year was loved in Miami, and for the most part outside of Miami was looked upon negatively only because nothing I think that happened on the court. I think it was all the off-the-court build-up in how they put their team together. But once they lost the championship, and some people were happy that they did, I think when they won the championship the next year, and we saw them, I thought, handle themselves and the negative attention so well for 2 years, I thought that they became, like most champions, really respected. That Game 6 win in Boston, I think people really, with their, down 3-2, to go into Boston and have LeBron James play such a dominant game and them win that after coming back in the previous series down 2-1 to Indiana, and Wade and James played so spectacularly. And then in the finals, down, 1 game to nothing and win 4 straight against a great Oklahoma City team. I think those 3 straight comebacks really were respected by most basketball fans, and I think that changed the dynamic on how Miami was viewed. And then going into this year, being the defending champion, winning 27 in a row, again, I think all that negativity from the average fan is way in the past.
Thank you.
Richard Deitch at Sports Illustrated with Bob Raceman at the New York Daily News on deck. Richard.
Jeff, how would you evaluate where you are regarding a possible return to coaching against staying in broadcasting?
Well, I think when you're talking about broadcasting, I'll never feel as comfortable broadcasting as I do in coaching because I'm just not, I'm still a novice at it. Thankfully I work with the Tim Duncan of broadcasting in Mike Breen. His understated greatness, really helps out a novice like myself. And, as far as coaching in particular, listen, if anything ever makes sense for a team and for myself where there's a fit of vision and values, I'd obviously consider it. And ESPN has been, so generous in allowing me to do that. But I also realize just how good I have it with the job I have right now. I don't take that for granted. I enjoy working with the people I work with. I enjoy being around the game. And, I've just been a big beneficiary of Mike and Tim Corrigan, the producer, to help me try to get a little bit better every year.
Jeff, just one quick follow-up. If you had to sort of go with your gut today, do you imagine you'll be back in broadcasting next year?
Well, that's a job I have right now, so I would think so. But, one thing I've learned, Richard, is I don't look, too far ahead. I don't try to plan, my life out. I have enough trouble getting packed and getting ready to go to the airport today. So for me to try to, plan too far ahead, I don't do that. I just enjoy what I'm doing. My dad gave me good, sound, solid advice when I was coming out of college. And he always told me, don't worry about your next job. Just do the job you have as well as you can. And, that served me pretty well. And I'm trying to stick with that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Bob Raceman at the New York Daily News with Mike Wise at the Washington Post on deck. Bob, how you doing?
Good. Jeff, from what you know, what do you think Popovich and Spoelstra think about, having to be interviewed during the game? And what do you think of that concept? Do you think it's a gimmick? What do you think?
Well, I think there's no coach that looks forward to it. I think just some hide it better than others. I don't consider it a gimmick, but I also don't, because they're distracted and they're trying to, get to their timeout huddle to do what their job is. I used to like it better when they had the boom mics in the huddle because you didn't have to do anything different. I mean, the Mike was different in there, but you as a coach didn't have to do anything different. And because of they're distracted, I don't think those are particularly revealing. I think what would be as good is, interviewing the head official. What does he see during what's happening in the first quarter? What are they looking for? What is the scouting report on these two teams? And, like when my brother did it and sometimes when Pop does it, I think it would be just as interesting interviewing a random fan, because they weren't like they're just not into it. And so it's almost become funny how short Greg is. I think he's thinks he's getting paid by the word, because it's really some of his stuff is very, very funny, short and to the point.
Thanks.
Let's go to Mike Wise at the Washington Post with Bob Wolfley in Milwaukee on deck. Mike.
Hi, Jeff. I'm curious. You coached against Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich many years ago. Are you blown away by the longevity and in a league in which referendums are passed down each season and players are changed and people are mixed up, that people like them were able to stay this relevant, this contemporary, this long?
Well, sustained greatness is the hardest greatness to achieve in any line of work. And to see Duncan, playing so well at this age speaks to his level of dedication. But I also think it shows his willingness to change. So the offense has become more and more pick and roll centric versus post up centric. And so if he fought that change, I don't think they or he would be nearly as effective. And when Greg Popovich and the Spurs got that first pick right with Tim Duncan, you're always looking for your best player to also embody the highest level of character. So if you combine great talent and great character, which Duncan most certainly does, and then you combine it with great coaching, you have something that can stand on its own for a long period of time. And I don't know if I could respect anybody more than I respect Greg Popovich as a coach or Tim Duncan as a player. I love his teamness. I love how he deals with his teammates. I love even how he deals with his frustrations. Think about it. Greg Popovich sits him out down the stretch of a playoff game, and how many stars, top 10 players of all time, would not happily, but would accept that decision and allow Greg Popovich to do what he thought was best for the team in that situation. A lot of stars would try to hijack that situation and make it about how they were disrespected. You never hear that with Tim Duncan, and I have such great respect for how he's conducted himself.
And follow up quickly, just the idea of great men, make great organizations. You worked for Pat Riley. Obviously, you've seen what Popovich done. Is this a testament to the owners putting the right people in charge and how much difference that makes for an organization?
Well, every great ownership or every great team has great leadership, and that starts with great ownership. You look at the two owners, and Peter Holt and Mickey Arison. I don't think you could have two better owners in the finals. Humble, not seeking the limelight for the success of their organizations, and then the two men in charge in Pat Riley and Greg Popovich, tremendous. And then the people that those great leaders hire in, Eric Spoelstra and R.C. Buford, and then the people those people hire. So you have the people who stand for something. They stand for putting, great people around them. And then, obviously, talent is important. But talent without basketball character will not put you in a position to sustain your excellence. And that's exactly what both of these teams have done. Sustained excellence because they have the right pieces in place.
Thanks.
Bob Wolfley in Milwaukee with Justin Terranova at the New York Post on deck. Bob.
Thanks. Two questions, Jeff. Number one, what is your level of understanding of Dwayne Wade's injured knee? How hurt is he in your mind? And two, could you contrast the two coaches in these finals? And are they alike or different? And if you were filling in one of those boxes that if you were evaluating a team, forward, backcourt, front court, whatever, center, and then came to coaches, would you check Popovich's box as the one that San Antonio has the advantage because of his experience?
Okay. What was that first question again? That second question?
Dwayne Wade's injury.
Wade? Oh, Dwayne Wade. So Wade and Miami's credit, they're not talking about whatever health issues he may be having. Now, the media are trying to give him the excuse on a nightly basis, but he's not biting, and I have great respect for that. And I truly have no idea if he's fine or if he's a little bit unhealthy or a lot unhealthy. I have no idea. I know this, though. San Antonio is not overlooking him. He played, a dominant effort game last night. The 6 offensive rebounds, the cuts to the rim. I think he figured out how to be successful even when he didn't feel totally comfortable offensively. As far as, who gets the checkbox with coaches, I've always laughed at that a little bit because so much of who gets the checkbox is who's, been around longer. Listen, both coaches are great. Popovich obviously has had the opportunity to do it for longer. But if you give Spoelstra 17 years with LeBron James, which may be a little hard since I think James would be probably like in his mid-40s, but if you did that with a great player with great character, he would also have that long period of success. So one thing I do know, it's easier to talk about what they both, how they're similar versus how they're dissimilar. They're both going to the Hall of Fame. They both have tremendous respect from the coaches they coach against, and they both have a level of humility that I believe shows NBA coaching in the most positive light possible. And the one difference is Eric wasn't going to be a spy in the Soviet Union, like Greg. So,
thank you.
All right.
Justin Terranova at the New York Post with Mel Brock at the Oklahoman on deck. Justin.
Jeff, the fact that you have gotten enjoyment out of broadcasting and been able to stay close to the game, has that made it easier for you to stay out of coaching, or has that not had an impact?
Well, the thing about broadcasting to me is the lifestyle of broadcasting is great. Like you said, you get to stay, around the game. Now, it's not as rewarding to me as coaching, but it's also not as disheartening at times either. So you have a more even keel lifestyle, I think, and that's been great. Like I said, I'm more than fortunate with the job I have, and I love to watch NBA basketball. I love to talk NBA basketball, and to the irritation of others, I like to talk about how I think NBA basketball can improve its game too. So, I'm like I said, I'm very, very fortunate.
Thank you.
Let's go to Mel Brock at the Oklahoma with Audie Joseph of the USA Today on deck. Mel.
Jeff, wanted to ask you what you thought the Thunder needed to do to get back to the finals next year, other than having their healthy Russell Westbrook.
Well, I think the positive of Westbrook getting hurt, and there's not many positives, is I think everyone who was critical of Westbrook saw just how good and how important he was. Two, I do think it gave them a better evaluation tool going forward about how good some of their younger players like Reggie Jackson could be. I was impressed with what he was able to do. And I think they've got to be excited about his future. I think the Kevin Martin issue, do they sign him back, or do they, how do they fortify that bench? Is it Kevin Martin, or is it younger players like Lamb, who they already have, and they spend their money someplace else? But other than Westbrook getting back healthy and that resolvement of the Martin, situation, I think they will be back in the finals if healthy, and I think they'll be the favorite to win it all.
Thanks.
Audie Joseph at USA Today with John Reed in New Orleans on deck. You there? Audie, you there?
Hi, sorry about that. Jeff, do you think that players such as LeBron and Duncan, how do they view their own legacies, and how do you view their legacies?
Well, I think the really good ones don't start skipping steps and start thinking of how they're going to be viewed till long after they call it a career. So I think, they're just locked into the present moment, knowing that it is very hard to do what they've done. And one of the reasons they've been able to do what they've done is because they've stayed in the present moment. I think from my viewpoint of them, they're going to go down as two of the greatest to ever play. Duncan's longevity has been incredible. His ability to come in as a power forward and then evolve into this center, I think is a testament to just, his willingness to adapt and change to the changes in the NBA game and their roster and how they played the game offensively. And I think that, what you're always looking for in the great players is not only how great they were individually, how much team success they had, but also how they handled themselves under the everyday scrutiny. And I think both guys have done a remarkable job with that.
Let's go to John in New Orleans with Dan at the Orange County Register on deck. John.
How you doing, Jeff? Do you see this series playing out as a physical battle? Do you feel that San Antonio's best hope of trying to win this, they have to be physical like Indiana was?
Well, I just don't think too many teams play big anymore, so they can't really be, physical. And the NBA rules really don't allow it as much. But I think the beauty of San Antonio's roster construction is that they can play big, with Splitter and Duncan, or they can downsize playing, make more 4-out, 1-in type of action with, Matt Bonner and Diaw. So I think that flexibility gives them the ability to adapt to whatever the game situation calls for. I think the hardest thing in the NBA is to find, the best player that you can build around, or best players. And in San Antonio's case, it's Duncan. now Parker, and then to a lesser extent now Ginobili. But then it's as important, and this is where San Antonio has thrived, it's surrounding them with the pieces that fit specific roles that you need to win. And they have done a remarkable job. R.C. Buford and his staff, to me, have done a remarkable job in picking the right guys to go around the best players.
Let's go to Dan at the Orange County Register with Ethan Skolnick in Palm Beach on deck. Dan.
Jeff, hi, thank you. There was a report yesterday that talks with the Clippers had become, quote, I think dormant was the word. I wonder if you could just kind of touch on your interest in that job, and also what about that job is so interesting?
Well, I've made it my personal and ever-changing philosophy to really stay away from specific questions about jobs. I think if individual teams want to talk about their job searches, that's great. But for me, I don't think it does myself or any teams any good by me being out there and talking about, interest level or their interest level or anything like that. But the Clipper job in general is a great job. I think you've seen with their acquisition of players, they've done a good job building their roster. I think obviously it's imperative that they re-sign Chris Paul, and it seems like that'll happen. They have a great practice facility, a great arena, a fan base that has really grown and swelled. And so to me, they're coming off a record-breaking year, win-wise, road win-wise, won their division, and just met a very, very good Memphis team in the first round. And Blake Griffin gets a little banged up, and it doesn't take much to swing the tide in these playoff series that are so tight and so close.
Ethan Skolnick at the Palm Beach Post with Benjamin at the Denver Post on deck. Ethan.
Hey, Jeff. Popovich and LeBron have both expressed a lot of respect for each other over the years. I was just curious, as a coach, with the level that LeBron's at right now, is there anything that a coach can design over a period of, say, a week to 10 days that Popovich has had to make things more uncomfortable for somebody who's playing at a level like LeBron's playing?
Well, I think you go back to your base defense and your habits, and I think the only thing that ever makes a star uncomfortable is the individual matchup. Do you have a guy who has the belief, the instincts, the basketball IQ, the mental toughness it's going to take to withstand the assault that he'll bring, the length? So all those characteristics, do you have a guy like that who wants the challenge? And then if you have a guy like that or a couple guys like that, then you can do a couple things, not anything he hasn't seen, but to try to take away what he does the very best. You can try to do that, but it starts with who do you have to match up and who wants to be locked into that head-to-head battle. And then the scheme is almost secondary. But the thing about San Antonio is they have good habits defensively. I love Kawhi Leonard. He's like the human mute button. He doesn't say a lot, but his game talks very loudly. He's improved dramatically offensively. He came into the league an aggressive defender, and so I think they have a matchup that gives them a chance. Now, you're not obviously stopping LeBron James, but you want to try to at least, make him work for it, reduce his efficiency somewhat. Similar to what, Chicago. I think he shot 43% against Chicago. Most people would go home and celebrate that if they shot 43% against a great Chicago defense. But, that's the reduction in efficiency, that small reduction in efficiency that you're looking for against a great player to try to swing the pendulum your way in any one game.
Thanks, Jeff.
We're about 30 minutes into the conference call with Jeff Van Gundy, who, reminder for all, is going to be calling the NBA Finals for the 7th consecutive year with Mike Breen and reporter Doris Burke, and they'll work alongside former NBA ref Steve Javie, who will be courtside during the series. Look for coverage beginning Thursday night on ABC at 9 Eastern. Continuing with the questions, we'll go to Benjamin at the Denver Post with Dave at the Newark Star-Ledger on deck. Benjamin.
Hi, Jeff. I wanted to ask you about Chris Anderson. Can you describe the value of the X-factorness of the Birdman?
Do I have to call him Birdman?
Not
necessarily. Or can I call him Chris? All right, good. All right, I'm going to stay with Anderson. Well, listen, he plays really hard and with great energy, and he does it every night. And energy and effort is an NBA skill. Consistent energy and effort is hard to find in big guys. And then the added skill that he has is he can catch and finish. He has good hands. He finishes at the rim. And, you know, he has some things he doesn't do as well, obviously. He doesn't play huge minutes, but his minutes that he does play are impactful. And it was a big, big acquisition when, you know, they got him, and it was – everybody saw it as a gamble when they did it, and it's turned into a stroke of genius.
As a former coach, do you buy into the fact that a player can get the crowd going so much that it actually affects the energy of the players on the court, or is that just mumbo-jumbo, if you will?
Mumbo-jumbo to me. Yeah, I think, you know, get the crowd into it. I've never understood, the players waving their arms to get up. How about make a good play, and then the crowd does get up? You know what I mean? Like, you know,
but they get mad.
Teams get impacted by loud noise. What's the difference between loud noise when you're at home and loud noise on the road? I don't understand how noise would be a factor. Now, NFL, I get it, because they're not making noise when your offense is on the field, and then they are making noise. You know, that might – but the noise is pretty constant in an NBA game. I've never understood the whole concept of getting the crowd into it or taking the crowd out of it. I mean, I don't understand that.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
You got it.
Dave at the Newark Star-Ledger with Tim Reynolds at AP on deck. Dave. We have Dave's line open. Dave, you there? Okay, we'll come back to Dave. Let's go right to Tim Reynolds at AP with Mark Berman at the New York Post on deck. Tim.
Thank you. Good morning, Jeff. My question is just about maybe the perception of Spo and Pop. And I remember way back when Pop got some brushback for, basically, naming himself the coach when it was going bad there in 95 or 96, whatever it was. And the perception was, Spo, when he started, was just kind of a Riley puppet in some ways, and then LeBron sort of landed in his lap a couple of years later. Do either of these guys, even after all they've done, get the appreciation level that you might think they deserve?
Well, I think I think Pop does, but I think that whole notion that, well, he had Tim Duncan. Yeah, well, name me a coach in any sport who didn't have a great player attached to their name. I mean, of course, but the quality that I admire so much about both guys is that they are able to get the most out of that great talent. And I think because Pop has done it for so very long, I think he does get the credit he deserves. I mean, this is one of the great coaches to ever coach a team sport. The longevity, the creativity, the ever-evolving changes in their roster, and also who is the best and featured player on their roster. I think their ball movement set the great standard for NBA teams to try to achieve. And most importantly, I love the class that they demonstrate when they play. I love how they handle winning. I love how they handle losing. And I think that starts from the very top with ownership and obviously, Pop. Eric, to me, has never gotten in his short time the credit that he deserves, particularly those first 2 years that he took over. He was taking over in a pretty down period in Miami Heat basketball, and with Haslam and Wade and Wade obviously being his best player, but the cornerstone of Haslam, that they were able to win as much as they did that first 2 years showed his true greatness in coaching. And then how he's done these last 3 years now, being in the finals 3 consecutive years, and actually delivering more than could have ever been expected with James. I mean, to reach 3 consecutive finals is an incredible feat. And Eric's still at the phase where he gets more blame for their losses than credit for their wins, but he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's that good. His even-keeled demeanor, his humility, I think helps him really get the most out of his best players. And, it's just it's fun to watch his teams, fun to watch Pop's teams. I just love the grace and humility both teams play with.
As a very quick follow-up, Jeff, do you, when you watch the Heat now, do you still see the effect that Stan had on Spo, which obviously Spo still speaks of often?
Well, Spo doesn't eat the same food Stan does, so I know that's good, right? So he doesn't eat like Oreos by the package full. He still seems like he's relatively together. No, I think I don't know how that has manifested itself, but I know that Stan really appreciates Eric's friendship, and always, even when Eric was in the video room way back, he used to rave to me about the greatness that this guy had in him. And, watching from afar, Stan was absolutely correct. And, Pat Riley, when he could have gone out and hired other coaches, I think also knew what he had in Eric Spoelstra, and it's proven to be another great decision by Pat Riley.
Mark Berman at the New York Post with Stephen Bondi, the New York Daily News on deck. Mark.
Were you surprised by Jason Kidd's retirement after watching him in the playoffs, and where do you think he rates all time among point guards?
Well, I don't know if you're ever surprised that a 40-year-old retires from playing. I think it's coming, at some point. But I thought Kidd, his ability to age was remarkable in a backcourt position to take on a microfracture surgery, play heavy minutes, 40 years old, and sort of change his game from, a blur in the open court to more of a two-guard type who defended twos and multiple positions. I just love the way he handled his evolvement throughout his career. And Kidd, to me, you talk about like the winning that he was able to impact in Phoenix, and then taking a downtrodden New Jersey Nets franchise to 2 consecutive finals, and then win it in Dallas, and then come to New York and play a big role in them winning a division title and winning 54 games. Man, this guy individually put up great numbers, but the winning that he impacted, I think, tells the true story about Jason Kidd's greatness.
Just one other thing, considering what the Pacers did with the Heat, taking him to 7 games, does it put the Knicks in a different light, maybe a little more favorable, or not really?
Well, I never was on that bandwagon that their season was anything but a success. It's steps in the NBA. You don't usually go from really bad to championships. There's intermediate steps. And I thought the Knicks took a big step this year, and I thought the Pacers were very good. And let's face it, Game 1 swung the whole series. Indiana took home court, then were able to win 3 at home. And that's how quickly home court advantage can go if you don't play well. 6 months of effort to get the extra home game, lose it in 2.5 hours.
Thanks, Jeff.
You got it, Mark.
Stephen Bondi at the New York Daily News with Jacob at Pro Basketball Talk on deck. Stephen.
Hey, Jeff. What do you think of the Brooklyn Nets situation, and what kind of coach do you think this team needs to maximize what they have on the roster?
Well, I think they maximized their roster very well last year. I thought the only down part of the year was when Brook Lopez was injured early in the year. And unfortunately for Avery Johnson, who I think is an outstanding coach, that little downturn cost him his job. And then having been an interim coach, I know how difficult that situation is. And I thought P.J. Carlesimo and his staff did a really good job, a fantastic job in guiding them to 49 wins. And then, unfortunately for them, they lost a huge lead in Chicago in the first round of that playoff series. And then I think they probably all regret their first-half performance in Game 7 at home. That was a game that I'm sure that they'll all stay incredibly disappointed about throughout the summer because they had better talent at that point than Chicago did with all their injuries, and they didn't take advantage of that. And as far as what coach they have, obviously they have a very an ownership that is wants to win badly, and to me that's where it starts. They put the resources into winning. I think they need some, other components, to add to their roster to give them a chance to move up into that championship caliber team category. And I think they're going to get a really good coach because it's a really good situation. And so it'll be interesting to see who they pick out of a whole batch of really good coaches, who they decide on. But it all starts with the players. You can change coaches. But if you want different results, then there has to be more change than just the coach. It's either got to be roster manipulation or tweaks, or if you don't have that, then what are the present-day players willing to do differently to get even better results?
Quick thought. One of the criticisms during the season of Darren Williams was he wasn't the type of leader that team needed. Do you think that was a fair criticism?
Not from what I saw. I saw Darren Williams, particularly in the second half of the season, play with the energy and the intensity that NBA fans had grown accustomed to seeing. He's a hard-playing, highly skilled person. Now, everybody leads differently. Unless you're there every day, I wouldn't know if he's a vocal leader or if he's a little bit quieter. But what I do know resonates with all players is not as much what is said, but what is done. And to me, everybody I've ever talked to said Darren Williams was very good in practice. He practiced every day. He practiced hard. And you see that in the games as well. So I think he's a very good leader. And the final point on that is oftentimes it's not really as much about how someone leads is as much as who they are leading. You need to have the right guys who want to be led and want to pull the rope in the same direction.
We have time for a few. Thanks. We have time for a few more. We're going to go with Jacob at Pro Basketball Talk, Tim at the New York Post, and then Josh at SNY. We're going to go with those final three. So, Jacob, you're up, then Tim, then Josh. Jacob.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for taking my call. How much do you buy into the speculation that we could be seeing the end to this Miami Heat team, with LeBron possibly opting out, going back to Cleveland, Miami possibly moving Bosh or Wade? How much do you buy into all that speculation and rumors?
None. The rumors that surround NBA pro sports are. I wish somebody kept a percentage of how many were actually right. And I always wonder who the sources close to the Heat are, because the Heat and the San Antonio Spurs are very, very quiet organizations. They don't talk to a lot of outside people and reveal their innermost thoughts. So I always have a sense of distrust for sources say and rumors and innuendo, because I don't see them as usually coming true.
Okay, let's go. Sources say there's 2 more questions on this call. I think that one actually may come true. Tim at the New York Post with
Gundy. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Tim at the New York Post with Josh at SNY on deck. Tim?
Hi, Jeff. I'll be quick. You've talked both about the Clippers and the Nets jobs, and there's been debate about which is the better job, because they're probably the 2 best on the market. I know both have different strengths to them, but just from a evaluation standpoint, which do you think gives whoever they do hire the best chance to compete for a championship?
You're talking Clippers and the Nets, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's hard to discern without knowing the addition to the rosters, like draft picks, how well they perform. I think certainly if they re-sign Chris Paul, the Clippers have a greater depth of talent right now, but they're also in the West, which is a much more difficult conference. I think the ownership of the Nets has proven time and time again that they're willing to now, try to get elite talent, but how do they go about it because of their cap situation? That's a little bit challenging. And they're playing they're in a conference that is weaker, but they have a lot of people coming back next year off of injury. Danny Granger with the Pacers, Derrick Rose, Luol Deng with the Bulls. Rondo with the Celtics. So the Eastern Conference could toughen up too. So it's really hard to determine. I would say both are not far away. It just takes the right moves.
In an effort to prove the sources wrong, I'm told Josh disconnected, so there was only 1 question, not 2 remaining. I want to thank everybody for participating in the call today, and Jeff, thank you as well. We wish you luck in the finals, working with Mike and Doris and Steve Javi on courtside. The coverage begins Thursday, 9 o'clock Eastern Time on ABC. Anybody has any additional questions or additional needs, please don't hesitate to call the ESPN Communications Department. Look forward to seeing everybody and hearing from you down the road. Jeff, safe travels. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
All right, bye.